This right here is Sony's second version of their 70-200mm f4G lens. We will talk about everything important and compare to the first version, which I've owned and used for a few years now. The biggest change for this lens is that this is now a macro lens, and I'm going to show you some very nice macro shots later in the video, so stay tuned for that. I'm also going to give you some advice at the end if you should buy this lens, and another small tip to help you make your decision. Before we talk about the buttons and changes on the outside, I will very shortly go over everything obvious that didn't change. The aperture range is still from f4 to f22, and we still have optical SteadyShot and a 72mm filter thread on the front. The lens is made out of the same material as the first version with the same white finish. It kept the tripod mounting ring, which is still adjustable and removable. The lens is now slightly thicker, but thanks to being a bit shorter, Sony was able to shave off some weight. Other small changes are the lens hood now being a different shape, and the lens is now actually extending when zoomed out instead of being all internal. And to be completely honest, I'm not a big fan of that. I always like the all internal approach more. And even though you are now saving a bit on length at 70mm for transport, the lens is quite a bit longer when extended to 200mm. The lens is also still weather sealed, but there's not much information about it as usual. Actually, on the German website, the weather sealing isn't even mentioned at all. The overall feeling and handling still seems very nice, and I have no complaints about handling or quality at all. On the outside, the lens offers a well-known zoom and manual focus ring. However, Sony didn't add an aperture ring, and I don't really understand which direction Sony is choosing here. They add the aperture ring on every new G Master they release, like the 24-70 I have here. So one might think that it is a G Master exclusive feature because it was on the 14mm f1.8 as well. But then they also added to the small G lenses like the 40mm f2.5 I have here, which seems odd to me. It doesn't make sense, there's no consistency. Anyways, other than that, you still have the 3 customizable buttons on the outside, and the AF/MF switch as well as the OSS switch have been unchanged. However, their associated switches have been changed. Starting with the AF/MF switch, a new switch was added called full-time DMF, or full-time direct manual focus. If this is turned on, the focus mode automatically changes to manual focus if the focus ring is rotated, even when the camera and lens are set to autofocus. I can't really tell if this is a good feature or not. On one hand, it's easy and surely nice to have sometimes. On the other hand, if you accidentally turn this on or just forgot about it and rotate the focus ring by accident as well, you might not realize you change your focus and ruin the shot. It probably will never happen, so I'll take another feature, but much rather switch to manual focus manually if necessary. Going to the SteadyShot switches now, Sony has added the third mode for the SteadyShot. This third mode was added to minimize framing disturbances. This is apparently added to help you keep up with sports games, for example. I don't really have a good way to test this at this time, so I have to trust Sony on this one. Overall, it's another added feature, and that's always a good thing. The focus range limiter switch still offers the options for full range as well as 3 meters to infinity, which you know from the first version. Since this lens is now a macro lens, it now offers a third option called macro, which will allow you to focus between 0.8 meters and the minimum focus distance. This is multiplied by 1.4 or 2 if you have the associated teleconverter attached. Yes, this lens can now finally be used with both of Sony teleconverters. This was previously only possible with the G Master f2.8 version of this lens. Last feature on the outside is a zoom lock switch, which I know from the 24-70 G Master, and it works exactly the same. You can lock it for transport at 70mm, but even without it, it doesn't really seem to fall out when pointed down. There are some smaller changes like fewer lens group elements on the inside and a very slightly different viewing angle, but nothing major to talk about. The star of this update is, as I said before, of course, the macro functionality. The minimum focus distance at 70mm has been reduced to just 0.26 meters from 1 meter exactly on the old lens. I don't have a good way to test autofocus speed, but it does feel quite a bit quicker on the new lens. It's Sony's newer extreme dynamic linear motor instead of the regular linear motors, which apparently is just a fancy way of saying they are now upgraded and faster. Since there's nothing more to talk about really, we are now going to go to the computer to look at some micro shots and compare the images between the lenses. I don't have a good chunk of video footage this time around, since I didn't use these focal length for filming very often, and I didn't have this lens for very long. The raw files of the images we are going to take a look at in a minute will be linked in the description for you to take a sneak peek around at home. And while you are done there, feel free to leave a comment.
Hello, it's editing me. I couldn't make this work with the screen recording. I can't tell you why. I've tried several programs that just don't want to work with the monitors I have. So I'm gonna scrap that for now. Unfortunately, this video is 8 weeks overdue, so I want to get it out today or tomorrow. The main takeaway is the new lens is a lot more contrasty than the old lens, and the macro capability is great. So I put some pictures on screen right now, and I put some comparison of the old and new lens, so you can see the difference in contrast, and I will mark them. These are not edited at all. These are plain just converted to JPEG. You can take a look at all these pictures, as I said, via the download link in the description. And next time, hopefully, there will be no editing me in the video.
Before I'll get to a conclusion, we need to briefly talk about price. This bad boy costs 2,000 euros in Germany, which is almost twice as much in MSRP than the old one, which is now down to 1,100 euro. And it's really hard to compare the price, since there's actually no real alternative to this lens. There's the G Master f2.8, which is a good 1,000 euros more expensive for the second version and almost the same price for the first version as this one. And there's the Tamron f2.8, which will get a new version very shortly that costs 1,500 euro, but is also only a 70-180mm lens. Okay, quick side note from editing. Sigma just announced a 70-200 f2.8 lens. There's no price tag yet, there's not much information about it yet, so I can't really tell you anything about it. After I made my review of the 24-70 G Master, I asked Sigma for a rental lens for their 24-70 f2.8 for comparison. And yeah, basically they said, thanks for your interest, but no. Obviously, because you have not enough subscribers, not enough reach. So if you want, maybe, hopefully, to help me to get my hands on the 70-200 f2.8 lens from Sigma as soon as it releases, or close after that, you might want to help me out here and subscribe. So just sticking to the full 70-200 range, the question should be, is this worth 1,000 more than the old lens? Is it worth upgrading from the old lens? And at the same time, wouldn't it be better to save another 1,000 for the G Master or get the old G Master at the same price? Unfortunately, I can't conclude these questions regarding the G Master. I never had one in my possession or even for testing. Everything I could say about that would be just guessing or getting my information without validating them. Therefore, I'll stick to the first question. Is this lens worth twice as much as the old one, and who should buy it? I think it once again depends. If you're looking for a 70-200, since you don't own one right now, I would go for it. Even though I'm not a fan of the extending when zooming, this lens has a faster autofocus, more features like the third OSS mode, and obviously the very nice macro capability, which I really like. Overall, it's more versatile, and for first-time buyers, a good choice. If you have the budget, it's a very nice upgrade over the first gen, and I would only buy the older version if your budget is very tight and you can't save for the new one. For people already having the old lens, it's a little harder to justify to sell it and buy the new one. As I said, it's a good upgrade, but if you don't have any use for the macro capability, there's no very good reason for upgrading either. I'm personally mainly focused at travel photography and landscape photography, and for me, the macro capability isn't crucial to have. It's just a nice gimmick. And even though I like the faster autofocus, overall I think I could spend my money better than upgrading this lens. The overall conclusion for people who already have the old lens, at least in my opinion, is if you need the faster autofocus or the macro capability, you can buy the new one and won't regret it at all. For everyone else, I would recommend spending your money on other gear you might need or want first before upgrading this lens. My final tip to help your buying decision is to go out to a camera store and try it in store for yourself. From my experience, they are happy to let you take some pictures in the store, and if you ask friendly and leave your ID as a security, they might even let you try it out in the front of the store for a few minutes. Just make sure to bring your own camera and SD card. It's the best way to get a feel for the lens and to inspect the pictures at home for yourself. If you do have any questions or comments about these lenses, feel free to put them down below for me to read and answer. And if you found this video helpful or interesting and want to support me for absolutely free, consider subscribing and liking the video. Thank you.